telling people to tune in. So I'll probably see my mod and a couple other people.
Okay, phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are now live. Welcome to a conversation with Floyd Marshall Jr., and I am your humble host, Floyd Marshall Jr. And today we are joined by none other than Mike, Mike D, Michael Dennis, the founder and creator of Real Black Incorporated. And look, my web manager said do this before every show. So here we go. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, Floyd Marshall Jr. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've gotten that out the way. That's taken care of. Back to the show. Ladies and
Okay.
gentlemen, I am so excited.
I'm just wondering, we're
Sure.
having a conversation. Is this a Deer Park conversation, or is it like a Club Shay Shay? Do I need to pull out the red stripe? What are we
Well, you
doing
know
here?
what? It's a Deer Park conversation, but
Okay.
it may turn into the other one. I'm not sure, but we're going to see how
Okay.
this goes.
All
But
right.
this brother right here, ladies and gentlemen, he needs no introduction. If you know anything about the film industry, if you've been in it for any length of time, or even if you have not, if you're familiar with his YouTube channel, and if you're from Philadelphia, if you're familiar with his series that he did for over 15 years, which I was privileged to have one of my films actually show in his screenings, which was absolutely amazing. But I'm just going to give you folks just a little bit about who Michael Dennis is. His company, Real Black, is committed to educating, entertaining, enlightening, and empowering through film. As curator and host of Real Black Presents from 2003 to 2019, he introduced local audiences to independent works by makers like Gemma Samuel, Book of Clarence, Pete Chapman, Insecure, Matthew Cherry, Hair Love, and Chinonye Chukwu.
Chuku.
I hope I said her name right. Uh,
Chinoya Chuku.
Chinoya Chukwu. Real Black TV on YouTube is an archive for rare media that has amassed over 1.3 million subscribers since 2007. And he hosted Real Black Radio on WURD with broadcaster Stephanie Renee from 2015 to 2018. He has worked with some amazing people from the likes of Bill Cosby, Oprah Winfrey, Spike Lee, Warrington Hutland, Todd Phillips, Jim Swaffield, Lee Daniels, and wrote a screenplay for Chris Rock. He most recently served as executive producer on the 2K restoration of Sam Furstenberg's 1989 action film RiverBend, which we're going to get into later today, starring Steve James and Margaret Avery, which will have its world premiere on January the 7th, during your
Yeah, it happened
2027,
already.
2024 at the Denton Black Film Festival, which happened. But that's just a few things about this amazing brother. But I know him as someone who is 10 toes down when it comes to wanting to forward and empower Black people in film. And again, if you are in this area in Philadelphia, you definitely know who Mike D is because he has touched you in some way, shape, or form. So it is an honor to actually, have you on the show. Welcome, good brother. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Floyd. It's a pleasure. It's good to see you again. I mean, I lost touch with so many people during the pandemic, and
Mhm.
so it's just great to reconnect, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, it is good to reconnect. The pandemic, it slowed a lot of things down. And, even though it's been, a couple of years since everything ended, people are still kind of getting themselves back to, I guess, what you would call a normal. A lot of things have changed. The festival that I used to do is now totally online. So a lot of things have changed. But enough about me. Let's give the people that don't know you, some of my audience, internationally, who might not know Mike D. Can you tell us how you got started in the business?
Oh, wow, good question. And is this thing on? Is this coming in clear?
It's coming in clear. Can hear you loud
Okay,
and
good,
clear.
good. I wasn't sure which microphone I had selected. So I've been 35 years since in doing this. The last 25 5, I've been working full time in Philadelphia as a independent filmmaker and film promoter. Um, I guess my pedigree is, I went to film school. I was interested in film at a very young age. Around 13 years old, I knew that this is what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And, the universe has a way of creating opportunities for you once you set your intentions. I believe that firmly. And, so I ended up going to NYU. Went to Central. Anybody from Philly?
Okay.
Um, Went to Central, NYU, starred for a few years, finished my short film that I started at NYU, and it got me into the American Film Institute in Los Angeles, where I studied there for 2 years. I got a master's in film directing from there, and then came, about to starve in Los Angeles, but had the good sense to come back home, and I've been home ever since. Uh, Opportunities presented themselves for me to work on the movie Beloved, and a good friend of mine, Ray Morgan, who some folks might know, or he may be watching, I don't know. He introduced me. He invited me. He worked on The Sixth Sense, and he invited me to their wrap party, or actually a preview screening of The Sixth Sense. Like about a week before it came out, there was a cast and crew screening of The Sixth Sense, Night Shyamalan's movie. It was a year behind me at NYU,
Mm.
right? So uh, he was he predicted the success of the film at the screening. He said it's been testing through the roof, and this is going to change things. And when I saw the movie, I lived in Philly my whole life, but I never saw Philly look that way. He found locations and the cinematography and all that stuff, and it convinced me at the time that Philadelphia could develop a regional film scene that would be unlike New York, unlike Los Angeles. And for a long time, you know, Knight kind of ran the show, and he had a nice run of movies in the late 90s, early 2000s, where he was hiring local people and doing that kind of thing. And all the films had a very unique fingerprint that was his. So, I always felt like, that movie Unbreakable, with Bruce Willis being the hero and Sam Jackson. I always felt like I was the Sam Jackson to Night Shyamalan's Bruce Willis.
Mm.
So that's the mentality I had, for a long time, that we could bring something special to Philadelphia. And eventually digital video happened, and I was able to make my own films, independent of having to raise a lot of money or do those kind of things. And I started getting them into film festivals and meeting other filmmakers of color, Black filmmakers specifically. And at the time, there was no Black Star. You had Larry Smallwood had a film festival, and there were like little blips and blurbs of op, you know opportunities to see independent Black cinema at that time. We're talking about like the early 2000s. But there was no dedicated film festival. And I knew I didn't have the bandwidth to put one on myself every single year. So what I started was a monthly screening series where I invited the people that I was meeting on the film festival circuit to screen their work in Philadelphia. And like you said in the introduction, great introduction, by the way, wrote it myself. But anyway, um, but we had the opportunity to bring a lot of people that are now working in the industry and very successful, showcase their work here in Philadelphia for the first time or very early in their careers. So, and on top of that, we had a YouTube. The YouTube channel developed as a result of the Philly Cam show, which is still airing. It's actually airing later tonight, I think at 9 or 9:30 on Philly Cam, public access, Reelblack TV. But so that's it in a nutshell, how I got my start and how I landed here in Philly.
Okay, so you said something interesting when you were talking about M. Night Shyamalan after he shot The Sixth Sense, which was an absolutely phenomenal movie, and it
Hmm.
did show Philadelphia in a very nice light, because when I was sitting there watching it, I was like, oh, that doesn't look like the Philadelphia I know. But you said something interesting. You said that you thought that after having watched that was an opportunity for Philadelphia to kind of get put on the map as far as people coming here to make films. So why do you think that never panned out, especially for filmmakers of color?
Well, two things. I kind of fault Knight in a way because he has this mystique and aura about himself where what happens, to inspire people, they have to feel like they can do it too,
Mhm,
right? And I'm certain that he had a clique of people that he used repeatedly on all of his films, but the opportunities to work on big budget features never really materialized for minority filmmakers or people that were interested in making film. Like I said, I worked on Beloved, but after that, I didn't want to PA anymore necessarily. But I know a lot of people that would have died to PA on a Night Shyamalan movie and they didn't get the call. And Beloved was a very unique circumstance where they were looking for somebody like me at the time. It's a black Toni Morrison, Oprah Winfrey, white director. Let's create opportunities for black people to get some experience. And that was the hallmark of the early stages of my career. Like I worked on the Cosby Show as an intern, and later on You Bet Your Life, which shot in Philadelphia. They were looking for me. Um, but typically it's a racist industry, and they're not necessarily looking for black people that don't have experience. So that's one aspect of it. And then I think what happens also is the more talented people, they look at Philadelphia as a stepping stone. They don't look at it as a final destination. Now, I'm a little different in the sense that I had spent time in New York. I had spent time in Los Angeles, and family concerns led me to stay here. I was looking after my grandmother for 15 years, and she helped subsidize the screening series on many months, when
mhm.
we would fall short. She was the one that was putting gas in the car or helping to pay for banners or postcards at Staples, or what have you, So there was the codependent nature that I had with my grandmother that kept me here in Philadelphia. But, short answer to the question is basically people still have that Hollywood dream
Mhm,
in their mind. And Philadelphia never really developed the way Atlanta has. Um, Atlanta has young money. Philadelphia has old money, and people are very risk averse when it comes to wanting to invest in a film or investing in music. We had a great music scene. I really believed, that the screening series that I was hosting was inspired by Black Lily, and I felt that it would be an opportunity for people to see one another's work and collaborate. That's why I have to blame the filmmakers as well. It's a two-way street on that. Um, when the events were free in the first 2 years, I didn't charge anything to give out movie passes, and a lot, and we're talking about early 2000s. Allied, um, who provided the movie passes. They were also promoting the junkets, and a lot of times there'd be filmmakers in attendance for their preview screenings. And I always would give, hey, Louis Duvall, I would always give the tickets out to people that I thought would benefit from it, meeting the filmmakers and so
mhm,
on. At a certain point, it became so draining, and I was losing money on it. I had to charge a membership fee, and it was only $25, $35 a year to have access to these movie screenings. But I noticed right away the filmmakers stopped paying for the opportunity to come to the advanced screenings. And therefore I had to be in service of people who are movie fans and not filmmakers. And this is not uncommon. I witnessed the same thing happen when I was an intern at the Black Filmmaker Foundation. When the Black Filmmaker Foundation blew up, uh, there were a lot of people who saw House Party and they said, Big shout out to the Black Filmmaker Foundation. And as a result of that one motion picture, their membership exploded to the point where when it was a small group of people that were just filmmakers, um, all the meetings, all the organizations and events were centered around filmmakers and film screenings. But when the membership exploded and you had paying members at this point, paying $50 a year or whatever to be a member of the Black Filmmaker Foundation, Warrington had to skew, and Monica Breckenridge, shout out to Monica Breckenridge, had to skew their programming more to the general consensus of film fan and actor, as opposed to people that were dedicated to trying to tell stories.
Yeah, see, you said something that stuck out when you talked about filmmakers, because I'm a part of this organization right now, Film Factory, with Eli and Lou Bivens. And one of the things that we talk about with Philadelphia is looking to develop a culture of film. And we keep saying that's something that we have to do. And you just spoke to that, because you said that your series was centered around filmmakers, but the filmmakers themselves did not buy into it enough to sustain it. So then you had to flip it. And it's interesting because what often happens is they say, well, we don't have something, and then it's given to them. And then when you give it to them, they don't support it.
Yeah, that's human nature. I'm not gonna, I didn't miss any meals, but I think there were a lot of filmmakers that, for $25 a year would have benefited a great deal from the offerings that we provided, the opportunities to meet people at ground level in their careers. We had a brown bag lunch that was free, to meet Ava Duvernay when she had her first film. And then years later, I would run into people, oh, I would love to work with Ava Duvernay. It's like, well, it's a little too late to get on that train, but had you been in, and we had a lot of people that were on that train. I need to give credit to the Array Mavericks. They definitely stepped in. Lyra Specht and Marla and all those folks stepped in and did a great service for helping to solidify her fan base here in Philadelphia.
So you did that for 5 years. How did you get connected with Ava Duvernay?
She called me. We had a film. We had films in festival at the same time. That's why festival is so important, because the people that you meet in festival, you're going to continue to meet as you go through the ladder. So she had a movie called This Is the Life that screened at Urban World the same year that I had two movies at Urban World, two short documentaries. One on my grandmother called The 13th Amendment, and a half hour on Ursula Rucker. So she had known of me then. We didn't meet until later that year. We were familiar with each other's work, but we didn't meet until we got to Seattle. And her company at that point was called Forward Movement, and she did a symposium about film distribution at the festival, and I was screening the night before my Ursula Rucker piece. So literally, I'm not exaggerating, it was like a 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. symposium, and it was me and Craig Carpenter, shout out to Craig Carpenter, and maybe 5 other people who came to this thing. And she was dropping a lot of science about self-distribution. And so we connected there, and then maybe 4 months later, I got a call from her saying, hey, I got a new film that I'm just finishing, and I want to have national distribution for it. But I'm also about self-empowerment. So she said, she sat down and she said, well, what does national distribution mean? It means opening your film on the same day in multiple cities. So she had already done the film festival circuit, and she said, what if I got all these film festivals that I've screened at in the past together and formed an alliance with them and called the African American Film Festival Releasing Movement? Now, Real Black was the only non-film festival. We were promoters,
Mhm.
that were part of this group, but she picked, I think, 5 cities to start: New York, LA, Philly, Seattle, um, Atlanta, to open her film I Will Follow. And we took it to Cherry Hill. I learned a lot about how the theater system works, and getting tickets and trying to fill the house. Shout out to the Deltas and shout out to WRD, who were early adopters on that. And we had a very successful opening for her film, and it led to more films: Alec Brown's Kinyarwanda. I worked there for 5 years, I guess, and helped release 20 movies. So opened them here in Philadelphia. So it was a good experience.
Yeah, so that's amazing. And talking about empowerment, she spoke about empowerment, and that, from what you were saying, is now your main focus, along with the restoration of Riverbend. But to a lot of people, Black empowerment rather means a lot of different things.
Mhm.
But for you, as basically a master curator and someone who is deep in this business, for you, what does Black empowerment, especially as a filmmaker, mean? And what are you looking to do as far as empowering more Black filmmakers in the industry, independent and Hollywood?
Good question. I think self-reliance, self-determination is the key component on empowerment for me. I see you have Clarence Avant behind you, the Black Godfather.
Yes.
And I think I warn people of this, I believe. I mean, there's an interview of me talking when we closed the screening series and Black Panther came out. It seemed like we had arrived, that somehow the myth that Black films don't travel overseas and it's impossible for a movie with a all Black cast to earn $100 million at the box office had been disproven. And so many people that were waiting by the door for the previous 20 years, just waiting for an opportunity to work in Hollywood, suddenly got that opportunity, coupled with the George Floyd situation. You know, when George Floyd happened, everybody started looking for Black folks to fill their quotas. And I think at that time, I warned people, it's good that you're getting training and opportunities and experience from working in the studio system, but they really don't want you there. And it's important that you give back. You know, I saw it happen with Black Lily, you know, and it was a great number of artists that made their name through the opportunity to do a weekly jam session open mic in Philadelphia, founded by the Jazzy Fat Nasties. And a lot of them have gone on to great success in the music industry, won Grammys and what have you. But what happened, I think the reason why that ended um, sooner than it should have was there was no farm system, like there's no minor league. The people that were ready for the opportunity took it, but there was no giving back in that part where once I can't name names, but once they got signed, they could not afford to be at the Black Lily anymore. It's like their workshop. Stand-up comedians don't do that. Like a stand-up comedian is constantly working on their craft. They'll do a big stadium show, and then the next night you'll see them at the Comedy Cellar or at Helium or what have you. you know and I think that rubbing off of atoms, like being in the same room with somebody and feeling like, wow, I could just touch that person 6 months ago and now they're like hosting Saturday Night Live. Shout out to Shane Gillis, makes a big difference in terms of building a scene. And I'll take a hit on my end too. I'm not necessarily the most disciplined person.
Mhm.
you know um I'm certain that if if I had gotten my act together to a further point where I could hire more people, the scene would have taken off a little bit faster than it has, but I think Knight, in my estimation, if he had made himself less mystical at the peak of his powers and just shown up to not just stuff at Bryn Mawr and Film Society, but showed up at places where there were like regular folks. And maybe I should have asked him a few times to do it. I don't know. Maybe that's on me for not asking him to
Right.
show up at Reelblack or whatever. But I think if you can touch the hem of his garment, then you feel more empowered yourself. You feel
But
like it's more accessible. Your dreams can come true.
okay, I'm going to push back a little bit on what you said about you not doing a certain thing. You know what, Mike, in my estimation, because I look at where I am now in my career and some of the things that I'm doing now,
Mm-hmm.
and I say to myself, because sometimes I have that same sentiment, and then I say, well, you know what, maybe I wasn't ready at that particular time,
Okay.
because I believe that things happen at a particular time for a particular reason. So maybe, and this is just me speculating, that you didn't do that at that time because if you had done it at the time, you weren't ready for that. You see what I'm
Well,
saying?
yeah, I mean, that's a truism. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I can't dispute that. We all learn at our own pace. But
right.
I mean, in retrospect, I can say I should have lobbied Knight to come down to Reelblack and show
Okay.
something, instead of just telling people that, oh, Knight's going to be at the Kimmel, buy a ticket.
Okay.
I should have really said, hey, there's a scene happening here. There are people, but then, at the same time, like I said before, um, for the majority of the run of Reelblack, I wasn't film office.
Mhm.
I wasn't Bryn Mawr Film Society. I wasn't, or Philadelphia Film Society. I wasn't Bryn Mawr Film Institute, right? So my audience was film fans at that
Mhm.
point. So it would have been a little extra work to try to do that. But I think he was the ambassador. He was the mayor. And what happens, when it's time, he has his constituents, and unfortunately they don't look like us. I'll
Mhm.
just leave it at that. And but I probably, as ombudsman, as dog catcher, or whatever it is in relationship, as Sam Jackson to his Bruce Willis, I probably should have played that card and at least made him more aware that you have to be more than symbolic. I mean, I think a lot of people, quite honestly, can attest to wanting to be filmmakers
Mhm.
because, especially in Philadelphia, because they had a very early opportunity to see Ava Duvernay come through, to our events, come through at Black Star, stand there for 2 hours, shake everybody's hand, take pictures, shake hands. It becomes a more realistic dream, so that's all I'm saying, and we have very few heroes as Black people, and I think we have to be more present. We can't be mystical about it, um you know what I mean? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
It does make sense. But you know what? Touching on, the M. Night Shyamalans of the world, the Ava DuVernays of the world, and the other people that you worked with, famous people with serious resumes and pedigrees. And again, Mike, you've been doing this for a long time. So do you think with what you're doing now as far as trying to elevate Black filmmakers that you would ever get back to, okay, well, I'm not going to do screenings anymore, but what I can do is, workshops or networking events where I could invite an Ava DuVernay just to come down and have an hour-long talk with some aspiring filmmakers to let them know what the journey is like and
Yeah.
what needs
Well,
to
we
happen.
might. I mean, but I feel honestly the channel. people watching can go. I
Mhm.
mean, we documented all of that. I mean, all this stuff behind me, that's DVDs. That's,
Mm.
I got mini DVDs, hard drives, hours of footage of these people talking, and YouTube is full of it. I don't necessarily know if that's my role at this point. Um, I'll be 55 in September. I think, oh, there goes the light. I feel like my job is to preserve legacy,
Right.
not just my legacy, but to amplify what's already been done. Because I,
Mhm.
I feel like and I'm teaching now at Temple University, and I mean, kids are about to graduate, and it's a very uncertain world. The industry's uncertain. This AI thing is definitely something that's not really being taught in schools yet. Schools are about 10 years behind on the curve. If you ask me, in terms of what people are learning, you can go in with one intention, and 4 years later, some of that information that you've learned is completely obsolete because things are just moving that much faster than they have in the past. So I I I feel like if I don't use the opportunity, take the time to reinforce my legacy and make sure that the work that I've done up until now is preserved,
Mhm.
there's a good chance that 10 years from now, if we fast forward, there won't be any black filmmakers left. It will be black people making films, but they won't be making black films. When I started, it was all about what is a black aesthetic? What does black mean? And we were fighting against good times, right? Like, not all black people are like that, right? Fast forward, now we're in 2024, and what are we're still up against good times, you know, the animated version. So, you know, I I don't have the bandwidth to do one-on-ones anymore.
Mhm.
I mean, for me, it's about amplifying everyone's voice and being an example, of, I want the work that I promote and do, and I think you see it on the YouTube channel, to
Mhm.
represent Black excellence and help to empower people and entertain, you know. It's not like we're forcing you to take medicine when you watch Real Black TV, but the hope is that when you see the logo, it's worth your time. And I'm mad at all the people that meme the videos from YouTube, Real Black channel, and crop out the logo. It's doing everyone a disservice. Anyway, so I mean, but time will tell. I'd like to be invited to a symposium. I'd like to be invited to speak, and I have been, and you've invited me to be on your show, but I feel like, I got to get all this out of my system. I don't want to leave it. It just can't stay on these hard drives
Right.
forever. You know.
Right. But your channel, Real Black One and Real Black Two, it's definitely making an impact, and it's something that's definitely needed because you talked about real black films or black people making films, and that is a big difference. So for those who may be struggling with that concept, well, I thought it was all one and the same. Can you break down what you mean by that?
Well, it's two thoughts come to mind. One, I just finished teaching a class on race and ethnicity, right? And a lot of the foundation of that class comes from lessons that I learned from people that I've interviewed, like Dick Gregory and Charles Woods and Paul Mooney. And Dick Gregory schooled me on this. He said there's a difference, between black film and black people making film. If your work is just doing its if it's there to reinforce the status quo, which is the culture of white supremacy, you're not moving the needle. It's not of use.
Mhm.
And a lot of the I'm sure you have to, for the longest time, we didn't have representation at all. And we were forced to go to movies and sit there and filter our experience through white protagonists, white male protagonists specifically, right? And get our catharsis and our understanding of the world through Tom Cruise, through Bruce Willis, through these white heroes. Occasionally you'll get a Will Smith, but I don't want to get into Will Smith, but um, or Wesley Snipes. But the reality of it is, the question I always ask is it representation or is it justice? Do we get the same experience watching a film with Black people in it that white people get all the time when they get to see their heroes on screen? And I argue that 9 times out of 10 we don't. 9 times out of 10 there's still some sublimation, some subversion to Black identity that exists in these films. It frustrates me that we don't get to see Black families intact in movies. Not to say that I grew up with an intact Black family, but I think if you're presenting or projecting what the possibility of the world can be, and we all model ourselves based on story and mythology, it's important for us to see these things. It's admission by omission
Mhm.
when you show this stuff, and it seems like we've skipped far ahead of it. And now the powers that be, the people that finance these movies, they want to sing "We Are the World," and they want to show everybody in perfect harmony, which is a good ideal, but it leaves the Black American viewer, for the most part, out of the story. When you have biracial children, mixed race couples, you don't see Black family intact. You don't see Black love. So if people are concerned about the future, where do we exist in the future if we're not um, being seen in a position where we can procreate or have healthy relationships
Mhm.
at the very least? And that's a problem I have with social media. Um, it's so much dysfunction on Instagram and TikTok and all this other stuff. People, 13-year-olds acting like they're 20, and don't get me started. Anyway, um, but yeah, so I grew up with coming of age stories with white heroes and white leads. I grew, John Hughes, big influence on me. In the 80s, there were no real Black movies being made. Maybe you get one a year. Soldier Story, Color Purple, once a year. Now, there's media all the time that is representing of us, but does it give us the catharsis? I watched the new Color Purple. I couldn't get through it, and I love Blitz, the ambassador. I met him at Black Star. Big shout out, amazing job as far as the visuals, but
Mhm.
I couldn't get with the chain gang dancers. That's why I had
Mm.
to jump off board. It's like, there's no joy in that for me. I mean, to me, we just got finished talking about this movie, Goodbye Uncle Tom. And I'm
Whoa.
a big person for the truth. So when I see people who are being subjected to a chain gang singing and dancing,
Right.
it doesn't work for me.
Right. I don't think there were too many people on the chain gang dancing.
None whatsoever. I mean,
I don't.
maybe they were singing, but they weren't swinging the pickaxes and all that stuff.
Yeah, and you know what? That is so true because there's so much television, I don't watch anymore. And it's interesting what you said because I never could really put a name on what was going on when I would be done watching something and I would be sitting there kind of like, eh. And it's basically, what you just laid out. It was basically a sense of I'm not fulfilled because did I just see a true representation, or did the representative show up? if you understand what I'm saying, like when
Mhm.
you're in a relationship, did the real you show up or did your representative show up?
Well,
Because you wanted to
we
impress the
don't
girl.
get it's still the problem is, and this goes back to what you were asking earlier, what is the self-reliance? If we constantly have to get money from white folks to tell our stories, there's going to be some compromise.
Hmm.
There just is, it's like Melvin Peebles would say, the golden rule in Hollywood is he who has the gold makes the rules, right? So we're not getting, as long as we're looking to them for money, it's not going to be 100% truthful. But then at the same time, if we're not educating and providing examples of quality stuff that breaks the mold, then we're just going to be repeating the same tropes and things, and we're just going to be making white films in blackface.
Hmm.
And a lot of that's been happening lately.
Yeah. Yeah. But you mentioned someone that I admire from a business standpoint, which is Tyler Perry. And I was listening to an interview that you did, and you were talking about the fact that people need to support him. And for the very reasons that you just laid out, the
Hmm.
fact that he built that phenomenal studio down in Atlanta, and that if you're a black filmmaker, then that's where you should be making your films, to help him keep the lights on, to keep us, making films for us. So can you talk about that?
Well, I mean, do I support Tyler Perry? I don't know if I do to that extent. I
Hmm.
think it's important. Yeah, it's important to support black business.
Hmm.
But if I have any gripe with Tyler Perry, is he doesn't pass the ball. He's a ball hog. He's the worst, and I'm sure there are people around him that are like, pass me the ball.
Hmm.
You don't have to do everything yourself. You don't have to take credit for everything yourself. And the problem with that business model, the problem with Oprah's business model, it doesn't extend past their lifespan. The problem with Bill Cosby, he's already dead. As much as he did, he's already dead. They assassinated his character. So I mean, yeah, there it's different world is on tour and people are trying to look the other way on that, but people, his legacy is completely tainted. And you it's not a smart thing if you want to have a lasting business
Hmm.
to name it after yourself. Because the minute you're gone, they'll shut it down. And I've seen it happen a couple of times. We just lost Afro Kids. He was gosh, I can't think of his name right now, but we had him on the show, and he did animation for kids. He passed away. He was in his 80s. I mean, he wasn't hitting the mainstream with it, but the minute he was gone, they shut the website down. You
Hmm.
can't get that stuff anymore. And I think the same thing with Tyler Perry, creating a lot of IP and all that stuff. But I mean, who's going to run it when they're not there anymore? Is it just going to be the ghost of these people and showing these old clips? Like I Love Lucy or something. And people don't even realize Lucy was involved with Star Trek. But I think Kevin Hart might be the one to really pay attention to,
Hmm.
because it's Heartbeat and he's in the face of it, but he, with his laugh out loud, he he did barter systems. And Byron Allen also, although there's some problems with Byron Allen being such a small company,
Hmm.
and he claims it's black owned, but if he passes away, it becomes absorbed. So in terms of vision and stuff, I mean, I mean, none of us are without criticism. um I think you caught me on a day where I just don't want to support everything just because it's black, but I don't necessarily want to give all my opportunities, resources, and talent to white folks, because they're starting to do people dirty. They created these opportunities a couple years ago for my friends to get opportunities to make work, and now there's a retrenchment. oh, streaming's not making as much money. We don't need you anymore.
Right.
And then these people, and myself included, we did well on YouTube for a couple years, and now, the money's evaporating. Um, that corporate entity will, I don't use a heavy word like rape, but they will exploit you
Hmm.
and not think anything of it. Um, so I think it's really important to give back and invest in your own and try to plant seeds so that the next crop will rise. And I think that's the only way that we're going to get really authentic stories. I mean, a few slip through the cracks every once in a while, but for the most part, if it's white money involved,
Hmm.
there's levels of compromise that affect the outcome of the project, because they're interested in a global market and they're not necessarily interested in what your personal interest in wanting to tell a story is. So,
Yeah. And you know what? Sitting here listening to you and talking about all of the opportunities that we were given over the last, couple of years with diversity, equity, inclusion, and now they're basically pulling the football away like Lucy did. So
and
that if saying own your, excuse me, you can curse on this one. If saying own your own shit was a person,
mhm.
this is it, because they're basically letting us know that, yeah, we'll give you an inch to make whatever you're going to make you feel good. But as soon as we feel a little uncomfortable, or as you said, oh, well, this is not making any money anymore, then we're going to pull it back. And you see them pulling back diversity, equity, inclusion all over the place. It is unbelievable what they're doing. And you did it. You did an interview. I was listening earlier today on Black Tribbles, where you were talking about the state of Black cinema and how it was in a good place. But this was back in 2020.
2018, yeah,
Yeah.
when
So
Black Panther hit.
do you still feel that way with everything going on with Black film at the moment?
I think it is in a good place. I just want people to take responsibility for telling stories, or at least
Mhm.
trying to tell stories that make a difference, because the art form of cinema is, I mean, a lot of people in Hollywood are really in fear. I think good storytelling is always going to win. But, I came up at a time when every time a Black person showed up on the screen, it was a precious moment. Like, wow, come here, look. You know what I mean? And I may have overinvested in my belief system about the importance of these images, but I know as a human being how much I was shaped and influenced by those images, right? So when we have an opportunity to tell our own stories, um, I think they should be diverse. I think they should be truthful, and I think they should provide catharsis for the audience. Like, it shouldn't be compromised. People, if you're white and you show up, or if you're from a different culture and you show up and you see a Black story, it shouldn't. There should be no apologies. The same way, if I went to see a movie by Kurosawa, I'm not looking for him suddenly to paint some Black folks or some white folks into the picture. I want to know what it's like to be in that world, you
Mhm.
know? And I think that we, for the most part, this last wave missed that opportunity. Now, I mean, I'll point to Black Godfather again. Reggie Hudlin, he's not of that current wave. He's been making stuff since I got out of college and before, since the early 80s, he's been making films, right? So he kind of gets it. But a lot of people that had opportunities to make movies in Hollywood these last 4 or 5 years, that we're talking about, and since that last interview, that Black Tribbles interview, um, they may have made compromises that were unnecessary, in my opinion. you know. And I hope they save their money. I just hope they save their money and are in a position to take what they learned from those experiences and do something with it.
Yeah, but we're gonna switch gears a little bit because you're one of your endeavors right now is the good grief with River.
Riverbend.
Yes, with RiverBend, the restoration of RiverBend. I had a brain freeze there for a second. So can you
Okay.
tell us about that film and why you're looking to restore it? I saw the trailer and my blood got up. I was in
That's
the car
good.
like getting hyped, like, wait a minute now. Especially the scene when dude was like, "You resisting arrest." I said, "Oh, see, here we go, here we go." But
Well, people, you should have played the trailer. But anyway, Riverbend, it's a movie very few people know about. I mean, we put it on the channel, my Real Black YouTube channel, about 5 years ago,
mhm,
and I got a call, email from the director, Sam Furstenberg, and the movie is about a small. I'll show you the original VHS. Um, the movie is about a small town in 1966 and a trio of Vietnam soldiers who are about to be court-martialed, and they escape to the small town called Riverbend, Georgia, and they find out that the town is being run by a racist sheriff who rapes and commits murders and does all kinds of stuff. And the townspeople ask them, "Well, can you help us fight back?" And they do. And there's only one other film that I can think of that's similar, which is The Spook Who Sat by the Door, which is
mhm,
one of my favorites. And so this movie is totally about Black empowerment. It also stars the late Steve James, who was in the American Ninja movies. People know him as Kung Fu Joe from I'm Gonna Get You Sucker. And he was in a lot of stuff to Live and Die in LA. He died very young. So of cancer, I think he was like 41 when he passed away,
mm,
something like that. Maybe even 31.
wow.
But anyway, long story short, Sam reaches out to me, and I think it's gonna be a cease and desist,
Mhm,
right? Because it's like, how dare you put my movie up? And he's like, no, thank you for putting this movie on YouTube because it deserves a wider audience.
mm,
This movie was shot independently in a small town in Texas, with private money, and basically Paramount Pictures, Prism Entertainment bought it so they could bury it. They didn't want this image out in 1989. And thank you for helping to revive it, and preserve legacy for him and for Steve and for Margaret Avery and Julius Tennant, who's married to Viola Davis. And it's a really good movie, and it's very entertaining. And shout out to Charles Woods for turning me on to it, because we had it at the video store I worked at. I never would have watched it because of box art. So the first thing we did was make new box art. Uh, and we found a print in South Africa of the film,
mm.
and I financed the transfer and restoration of the film, and we had a very successful premiere in Texas, in Denton, Texas, not very far from where the movie was shot. Steve James' daughter came out. Sam Furstenberg was there, and in the process of setting up the screening, we discovered Valerie Vance, who was one half of the production team that helped conceive the movie. Her husband, Samuel Vance, passed away a year ago.
Oh, wow.
But Valerie came out to the screening, and there was only one problem with the screening. My print, from the time that it was struck to the time it ended up in South Africa, people cut scenes out, about 10
Oh,
minutes of the film. So we replaced those scenes with VHS footage. Turns out Valerie has an uncut print of the film. So right now we're in the process of trying to raise more money so that we can get the entire uncut print. Well, Sam wants to make some changes, but release a director's cut of the film in time for Juneteenth of next year. So, whoever's watching this, the Cash App is there. If you just Cash App and put in the comments RiverBend, I'll move that money over so that we can put it in a pot and we can compensate Valerie and get the print transferred in time for Juneteenth.
So why is it important to have this film restored? Why is it important to you to have this film restored?
Well, otherwise it would be lost. I feel like it's we've done the due diligence. It's legitimately an orphan film. And you can Google what that means, but it's an orphan film. We have access to an uncut print of it. It's not been in circulation anywhere outside of YouTube since 1989. And 1990 is when the VHS release came out. It literally has not made it to DVD, Blu-ray, or any of those things, And it's a very important film in my sense of what we were just talking about. Because, again, it's one of the few films, if not one of two, in the entire history of cinema that show Black people fighting back against their oppressors. It's this and Spook Who Sat by the Door.
Okay, so I want to ask you about, and we're almost near the end, but we not get out of here before we talk about good times. But I want to ask you about
singing cockroaches. Okay.
No, we're not going to talk about good times yet. Not quite.
Okay, all right, okay. Don't get me started.
Tubi.
Okay.
Films on Tubi, because the message you sent me the other day, you said you really don't watch Tubi or Netflix.
Right. I think I need the red stripe now. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Saving that for the last.
Well, if we're gonna go deep, you want me on.
I want my audience to know, because for me, a lot of movies on Tubi are quite painful, especially when it comes to our films. Mm-hmm. So what is your take on a lot of the films on Tubi, and in your opinion, what do you think is the reason behind so many of these films being made the way they are? They're gratuitous sex. The story, there is no story oftentimes. Now, first of all, let me say this. I've made films before. It's hard to make a film. So yeah, kudos to anybody who can finish making a film. But I just wish that they would put more. You said something really interesting on an interview about people making a film in a week and then celebrating the fact that they made a film in a week.
That's Tyler Perry, but yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, he has the resources where he should be investing more time and energy into his product, but maybe he's got attention deficit disorder and that's how he operates. I don't know.
But so with that, it seems as if a lot of
white people don't brag about it took me a week to make a movie.
Right.
They just don't.
Yeah. You don't hear that too often. And you see a lot of films, and I don't want people to think I'm hating. I just want people to do better. So you see a lot of films on Tubi where you see the mic in the shot, or the dialogue is just unbelievably bad and things like that.
See, I don't watch Tubi. I barely watch Netflix. I pay for Netflix.
Okay.
And I barely watch it, but I'm 55. So I'm not the Tubi audience, and having a subscription to Netflix is like when my grandparents would get Ebony. It didn't always get read, but it was in the house.
Right. If you didn't do anything, you looked at the female of the week. If that's all you looked at in the Ebony magazine, you looked at that and then you put it back down.
But shout out to Lamont McLemore. He's got a great book out called Beauty of the Week.
Wow.
But anyway,
I'm going to have to pick that up. But let's since you don't watch
Tubi movies, are you giving? Is this like Double Dutch? Am I supposed to go in on these people?
No. I thought maybe you didn't watch Tubi because you'd watched Tubi and you said I can't watch no more.
I watched Cinnamon on Tubi, and now that was financed by Tubi, and it had a good cast, and I was entertained by that. So I appreciate the fact that when they started to recognize that they had a sizable Black audience, that
Mhm.
they financed one that was good. Um, I think Tubi is sort of like the next generation of what Amazon Prime was 10 years ago,
Mhm.
where, they allowed anybody to put stuff on their platform. If they promoted it properly and it was ad supported, you could have entertainment. Now, the fact is these movies are very popular. Some people, and I don't think that they're made for general audiences. I think it's sort of like black exploitation was in the 70s. White folks are not going to stop and look at Tubi, nor will they feel offended by a movie on Tubi that shows us being ignorant. Um, they just look at it and say, "Oh, well, it's not meant for me. I'm gonna click over and spend my time watching something that is." Um, but I think anybody who has a love and passion for cinema
Mhm.
is going to take great offense at people wasting opportunities to tell stories. And if you and I know a lot of people that make movies on Tubi and independent filmmakers that didn't have necessarily university training, and they've taken it very far.
Mhm.
So I think it's you can train yourself to be good. You don't need film school. Film school provides a pedigree that gets you past certain barriers in certain people's eyes. But I was telling my students today, when you get out of school, nobody's going to ask you what your GPA was.
Mhm.
you know a lot of times they don't even ask if you graduated. Just the fact that you went through some of that process is enough. But um you know I mean, Hollywood makes bad movies too.
Mhm.
There's so many. I don't feel like you got to watch them. I don't I think we if you want to if we have limited time, we can talk about good times. And I think that that's more of a prime example of what bothers me and offends me about the current state of entertainment. It's not somebody who's trying to make their 5 grand turn into 40 overnight,
Mhm.
by making a movie with their friends and getting it seen. I can't knock that hustle. And for every 50, you know I don't want to, Joe Schmoes that
Mhm.
are doing it. We might get lucky and find one that really advances into an auteur. So, it's always been like that. So the fact that Tubi exists as a platform for
Mhm.
people to get their work out and be discovered, I think is great. But um, there, you kind of start where you end up. If
Mhm.
you're making bad movies, no one's gonna pull you aside and say, "Hey, can you make a bad movie with my money?" You know,
You're right.
so so I think it's imperative. Like, there's a lot of stuff I've done that I'll never show anybody. It's just practice. But there's a lot of stuff that I'm proud of that I wish more people would be able to see.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, but let's talk about good times. I saw the trailer a few weeks ago, and the word that came to mind was disrespectful.
Totally.
Because for me, now this was just for me when I saw the trailer on Instagram because it blew up on Instagram and people were losing their minds. And when I saw it, I said that's very disrespectful. And for me, the reason I thought it was disrespectful, and I was talking to my wife about this. I said, although the Evans were poor, they had dignity. They had dignity. You see so many surveys on social media about who. If you had to pick a dad, who would your dad be? You've got James Evans. You've got
Mhm.
Will Smith's uncle. Then you have good grief, Urkel's dad,
Mhm.
and then a couple of other people.
Right. Oh,
Who
Cosby
would you
didn't make the
pick?
list, huh? Okay.
He makes it sometimes, but then sometimes he doesn't. It all
Yeah, he's
depends
off the
who's doing the
list.
post.
He's off the list. It's unfortunate, but he's off the
But
list.
for us growing up watching that in real time, Good Times was a phenomenal show, and James Evans was a very powerful force. And the fact that, gosh, Florida's Evans' name is slipping my mind, Esther Roll,
Mm-hmm.
when she took that role, she said, "I am not making this without a man in the house." She said,
Yes.
"I'm not going to do it." So when I saw the trailer, although it's an entire family, okay, it went so far away from, in my opinion, what that show was about, that it saddened me. And the one thing that I kept saying to myself, and I want your opinion on this,
Mm-hmm.
if they had called it anything but Good Times, I don't think people would have had as much of an issue. But as soon as you attached Good Times to that show, and that's what you gave us, you got a problem, because you're basically undermining everything that people remember good about this show, the artwork. And then the fact that at the end of it, they all did a George and Wheezy and moved on up.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it.
Well, it's not the first time that we've been slapped in the face like that with remakes of things that we consider to be beholden classics, black classics. When they remade Sparkle, I wondered why. When they did Superfly over again, I was like, this, I mean, Superfly was about drug dealers too, but the fact that people the people that they got to remake it didn't really seem to understand what the spirit of the original piece was about and why people love it, made it not successful to me. But if you want to talk about Good Times, the animated series on Netflix, that's on a whole nother level of disrespect. For two reasons. One, it's tone deaf to what the spirit of the original Good Times is, as you say. Um, the show lost me from the very first scene. I don't know if you watched the show, but
I watched the first episode.
yeah, I can only get through one episode. I didn't want to clock in more hours trying to,
Mm-hmm.
because that's how they clock ratings, is how many hours somebody spends watching the show, right? So I didn't want to contribute to any opportunity that this might get for renewal. But the opening scene is the guy, I don't know, James Evans the fourth or whoever it's supposed to be. I don't know if it's supposed to be Ralph Carter's kid or Bernadette Stanis's kid or JJ's kid, but he's in the shower butt naked,
Mm-hmm.
and he's singing a duet of the original Good Times
With a
with a
roach.
cockroach. And I said, okay, if he killed the cockroach, I would have been totally on board. Get the F out of here, cockroach. But the fact that they made it a character that's on par, in harmony with this family's standard of living, and then you see rats and roaches and guns and drugs, crack dealing babies and all that kind of stuff. It makes you wonder who is giving us a pass, you know? And I reached out to the showrunner on Instagram. She eventually blocked me and made her account private. But she was very open at one point, and I said, "This really hurts my soul to look at this trailer, and I'd love to have a conversation about the show with you." And she's like, "Well, wait till you see the series.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little different than the." So I gave it a shot. But you're right, totally. If they called it anything else, PJ's Part Two or anything, I don't think there would be any disruption
Mm-hmm.
in any kind of negative way. It would just be taken for what it is. It might even be received positively if it was called something else. I don't know. I don't necessarily think that a crack dealing baby is a good character to project, especially if kids are going to be watching it. But that these are the same people I give my $25 a month to on Netflix, that gave us the Shirley Chisholm story and gave us the Bayard Rustin story and gave us Black Godfather. For them to be so tone deaf as to greenlight this version of a Good Times animated series, and I know they had a lot of proposals before they got to this idea, is just offensive. And it makes you wonder who they have in charge that would allow it. But it's the same conversation that's been going on since forever. We don't have control of these things. It's white. There's a book out a long time ago called Black Film, White Money. And until we figure out how to capitalize, and that's why I got the Cash App there. If people really want to see something that at least I endorse, there's an opportunity to put your money where your mouth is. But just like in politics, we get the government we deserve. So, and this is an election year. Whatever the outcome, if you didn't come out and vote, then you have no right to complain. And it's the same thing. We can vote with our dollars. We can vote through protest. There are petitions out saying, hey, I don't approve of this good time thing. And I think it's imperative that people that have a love for this stuff not to look at it as just intellectual property, but as something that we really care about. And I think we would have welcomed a reboot of Good Times if it had been done in the same spirit. Unlike some of these other ones that I mentioned, like Sparkle and Superfly, and you don't see them trying to remake All in the Family. So they're going to remake Gone with. They're not remaking Gone with the Wind. There's certain things that they won't touch, because they know that the risk does not validate the reward from it. Kenya Barris is redoing Wizard of Oz. It just sounds like a black version of the Wiz without music, but to me that's a setup. It doesn't work that way. You can't. There's certain things that just they're not going to be promoted properly, and Kenya needs to be very careful when he does that Wizard of Oz remake. Not to. If it's all black, then it's basically the Wiz with black people,
right?
Or Wiz without music, but
right, yeah. But
you get it's a sacred cow, and they do it to us all the time. It's not surprising, and we don't protest enough. We should be out there picketing Tyler Perry, like, hey, can you pass the ball? You got all this money in the world, right? Create a subdivision, create internship programs, sponsor a short film showcase, do something with that money other than hoard it and keep cranking out the same thing over and over. It doesn't all have to be a hit. If you're creating opportunities, that's something I learned from Dr. Cosby. He created a lot of opportunities you will never know about, but he was at one point, he was the only game in town. At one point, Spike Lee was the only game in town. At one point, Ava DuVernay was the only game in town. And I admire those people because when they got the opportunity, they handed something back. Jazzy Fat Nasty's same thing. So
yeah, that is so true. And with Tyler, could you imagine the farm system that he could develop of black talent?
Byron Allen too.
Yeah,
not everybody is there's certain people, and Kevin Hart too. Maybe that's what we need to do, Floyd, is write a letter, petition some of these people to come up with some cash to sponsor some sort of film development, short film showcase. I noticed, if people haven't noticed, Black Star just announced their short film project. They're giving away money, or they're budgeting short films to show at the festival. And I think more people at the top were in positions to do it. Dave Chappelle, any of these people. Maybe we need to put our heads together and figure out how to subsidize some productions. and create more opportunities in their name.
Well, look, you said say less when what I'm down for it because much like yourself, my main mission and goal is to empower Black filmmakers because in my estimation, when you undertake that endeavor, you become a sole proprietor, you become a business.
Hmm.
And I want eh, businesses to thrive, especially Black businesses. And I tell Black filmmakers this all the time. You're not a Black filmmaker. You're a Black business owner who makes films.
Hmm.
So you got to look at it that way because it's a product that you're taking to market and you're marketing it to consumers. You got to think that way. To create all day long. But if this is something that you want to do to sustain yourself, if this is something that you want to do as a living, then you have to have a business mindset. And Eli is here, part of the Philadelphia
Yeah, I see the chat.
Film Factory. Yeah, and that's something that we talk about all the time. So we're almost done. This has been an absolutely amazing conversation. So what's next? Because I know you have. But before you go, I want you to talk about because you have Reelblack One, your first YouTube channel, but you also now have a Reelblack Two. So can you tell people about that so they can definitely
Okay,
subscribe
yeah,
to
sure, of
Reelblack
course.
Two, please?
Well, I want to entertain the chat real fast. I see Christopher Mann is in the room as well. I mean, distribution still becomes a major thing, but the fact that the movie exists and it's maybe again, being in the same room with somebody, like if like I know for a fact that Brett Ratner felt super duper empowered when he got a check for $1,000 from Steven Spielberg to make his short film at NYU. Right. It gave him some extra juice that he didn't have before that moment. He framed the check and put it in his dorm. So I'm just saying, to Christopher and whoever's watching, like if we lobby and get some of these Black millionaires who are in the film industry to put up $1,000 a piece, maybe you need a little bit more to do something successful, but put some money towards an endowment to make or cultivate the next round of Black storytellers and actually finance the film. It really doesn't matter where it gets seen because whoever's financing it will ultimately want to see the film, and that will empower whoever is not only making the film but in line to try to win that award. They're going to put their best foot forward. If they say, "Oh, the Tyler Perry Prize," you know what I mean? So distribution becomes secondary, especially in short film. But in a perfect world, you might end up, if you have the right producers involved that are shepherding these projects, you might get somebody like a Janice Memel, who won like 2 Oscars back in the early '80s for producing short films and had a nice run and cultivated a lot of talent at that time. So that's a door that's not been knocked on or opened as far as I can see. We're still getting money from white establishments to make films, to ultimately be calling cards to get jobs making television for them. So if we're in the empowerment lane, um, let's get a petition together and say, hey, 10 grand a piece. We can make, pick Chappelle. Who's your top five? Chris Rock, Chappelle, Tyler Perry, Ava, Oprah. Give us 10 grand a piece.
Oh, LeBron in there too. He got
LeBron, yeah,
LeBron.
you got LeBron, you got all
Yeah.
these sports figures, and we'll go and make these movies, and we'll see at the Oscars. You can take credit, and all the people that didn't get in, they'll try again next year. It has to be money enough so it sustains itself. But that's one way to do it. But yeah, Reelblack 2 is the monetized channel. After they demonetized Reelblack 1, I had to scramble and start a backup channel. People have been telling me, be careful. You should have a backup channel for your content on YouTube. And I was like, yeah, but They're the only ones that are giving me incentive to post anything. And I was flushed during the pandemic. I was blindsided when they demonetized. So what we did was move over all the content that I made over the last 15 years over to Reelblack 2 so you can see it and I can get paid for it. And Reelblack 1 is more of the curated historical content, the Malcolm X speeches, the RiverBends, the things like that that I don't own the rights to, nor do I claim. And YouTube can make money off of it, but I can't. So there's a sense of injustice in that. They allow for reuse content, but they won't reward people for it. The curation aspect of it. So yeah, subscribe to both channels, Reelblack 1, Reelblack 2. Send a cash app. If you send a cash app and you put RiverBend in the thing, I will migrate that money over to our restoration project. And yeah, that's about it.
Okay. So what's next on the agenda for you for Mike now?
I feel recharged. Today was the last day of classes at Temple. For me, I still have to grade papers and get out of, close the book, so to speak, on the job. But the next 2 or 3 months, I just have to hustle. I gotta, we'll be shooting concerts for the channel. I love filming live concert events and doing freelance video work. I'll be writing, hopefully. I always say that I'm going to be writing, and I procrastinate, and then 2 months later, I haven't written. So I'm trying to get better at that. And we're gonna hopefully screen RiverBend a few times between now and the end of the year at different festivals. I can't really say because it's not officially announced, but we've gotten into a couple festivals already, and it looks like we'll be screening in Indiana at the Black Film Center in the fall. So that's just following my bliss, my passion, trying to stay positive about everything, and just being really grateful that that you took the time, hour and 21 minutes to spend with me. So thank you.
Well, brother, you know what? We could have been here a lot longer because I'm looking at the chat and they're talking about distributors. We could be here for another hour, but we have to shut this down because I don't want to monopolize your time. But
Well,
ladies and
I'm
gentlemen,
cool. I
well,
don't.
you know what? Let's go for about another 10 minutes because you know what? I'm seeing some interesting comments in the chat.
Yeah, do you want to
Warrior 44
pop them up
says,
on the screen, or just want to read them off the
yeah,
side?
I'm going to read them because I'm not tech savvy. So we pop them up off the
Okay.
screen and the whole screen will go away. But Warrior 44 said it seems to me that you can raise money, but if the distribution people are not distributing, you won't go very far. Let me say something to that. And especially if we're talking about short films, and a lot of you may not know, there are a lot of Black streaming services out there right now. They're flying under the radar because they don't have like a Netflix money or things like that. But if the one that's the most famous at the moment that comes to mind is Quayle TV.
Hmm.
There's also another lady that I'm very familiar with, good friends with. Her name is Kanithia Powell. She has Quest Films TV, and then another female. Oh gosh, her
Well,
name
this
escapes.
is Black owned distribution.
Black owned distribution, Black owned platforms where you could put your films on these platforms.
I think David Oyelowo has one as well
Yeah, so there are multiple
with
platforms that you can actually get your content on. It just you may have to do a little bit of legwork, but this is what I'll do. I'm going to get a list together and then I'm going to post it on Facebook, Instagram, and then I'll do a short video here on YouTube with all the Black distributions and more importantly the Black streamers, because you have Black streamers. So if we're talking about where would your film go to live, that's one place it can go to
Right.
live. And if you're talking about features, listen again, I ain't got no problem with Tubi. Yes, they
Mhm.
were, yeah, Fox owns them, but it is what it is. It ain't, it is what it is. But if you can get your work out there and getting to, the ad market revenue where you got people going to your film and you're making money, make that money.
Right.
So, Film Hub,
Yeah,
things like that. Yeah.
not every, it's not a monolithic thing, I mean,
Mm-mm.
obviously these movies are popular uh for some people. They want to see that kind of stuff. It's just, to me, it doesn't enrich the culture when you're serving the lowest common denominator. And but I would just as soon point at Good Times than any Tubi artist. But
Mhm.
Voyeur saying that you need major distributors. I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily true. I mean, I spent 5 years working with Ava Duvernay, so one of the things that helped her was with her second film, Middle of Nowhere. We managed to get it into a few more cities than her first, and sustain it for 3 weeks in theaters. And the first week, it was the number one movie per screen. Now, had also won an award at Sundance, but she entirely distributed it on herself, and it caused people to pay more attention. Like, where'd this movie come from? And the same thing with Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart would not be the Kevin Hart that we all know and love if he had not put his money where his mouth is with Jeff Flanagan and Lionsgate, and did the concert film that he put in theaters, the second one, Laugh at My Pain. That movie was number one per screen at the box office. It blindsided Hollywood. The same thing with Tyler Perry, with Diary of a Mad Black Woman. That movie opened huge and nobody saw it coming, right? So I think that if you establish a fan base, and you let people know where to find things, you can make a huge change in from an industry that is fear driven, and feels that there's not enough money to go around. So you don't necessarily have to hit a home run every time by their standard. You just have to survive the game, make enough money so that you can come back. And in this day and age, it's not necessarily monetary currency, it's eyeballs and attention, right? So and a lot of times people look at Twitter followers, and how much activity gets on Twitter, how many followers you have on Instagram. Those are the decision makers in this environment. So
Yeah.
you could make a feature film and put the whole thing up on Instagram or TikTok and cause a sensation, and you'll be invited. You don't have to pay for your next 5 movies if you're successful that way.
Yeah. I think we're going to have to do a part two. And what I'd like to do is, since we're having this conversation
Sure.
regarding distribution, I'm going to tap some people that I know as far as streaming platforms go, African American, and have them come on, and we're going to talk about this very topic. And another thing that we're not maybe thinking about is, oftentimes we're thinking in terms of Hollywood,
Yes.
and that's it. And the world is the world. And we have to start thinking globally.
Mhm.
Africa is really opening up. A good friend of mine, Angela White, she just did a film in Africa that's about to get major distribution. So we have to start thinking in terms of, well, we just don't need to get it seen here, that we have to start thinking more globally. But again, we're going to do another part to this,
Okay.
because we
That's
just we
fair.
just
I mean,
opened up. Yeah.
and the technology's changing so fast, everybody's scared in Hollywood. Um, so it's a perfect opportunity for someone to be a disruptor,
Yeah.
so I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for sitting here with myself and the amazing, incomparable, and uber talented Mike Dennis. I'm telling you, this brother is a treasure.
You missed out. You
Um,
should have had me start with this, but anyway.
oh man, yeah. Mike, it has been an absolute pleasure knowing you, brother. It's an absolute honor and a privilege to call you a friend. I've learned, so much from watching your channel and just how you want to move us forward as a people. It's a beautiful thing to see. And I am definitely looking forward to what you are going to do in the future. But before we go, besides Real Black 1 and Real Black 2, where can people find you?
It's Google Real Black and figure out what platform you're on. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, anything Real Black, you'll find me there, But you should tell people more about your platforms. I know you still doing Clubhouse, or you just moved over to this.
No, I done gave Clubhouse up for a while. I mean, I may go back, but they've changed it so much, it's just unrecognizable. So I don't do my live rooms on there. So basically, what I'm doing now is, I'm going to concentrate more on building out my channel and putting on, phenomenal content for, people of
Okay.
color, and, doing more interviews like this with people like yourself. Because, one thing that I believe, when I first started this podcast, the reason I started it was because I said, I'm not hearing from us. So I'm not the type to complain if I don't see it. If I have an opportunity to create it, I'm going to create it. So I ended up creating this
Right.
podcast to interview people like yourself. I interview Eli, I interview Christopher, and more
Mhm.
creatives of color. But it's interesting that I'm getting a lot of emails from public relations people. Other people are wanting to come on the show, so it's kind of getting very, very
You're
interesting.
getting
But
some traction. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
it's getting interesting. So I'm very happy about that. But again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for joining myself and the amazing Mike Dennis of Real Black. And I'm sure these are all your fans, but when you go look at Real Black, it's all one word. It's all one word.
yeah, I hope you'll let me share this on my
Please, please,
platform, and
please,
then
please.
and people should follow Floyd Marshall Jr. You're Floyd Marshall Jr. on everything, right? So
On everything under the sun. Nakia Dillard told me that. He said, use your name, Floyd. Don't have all these crazy handles. He's like, use your name. And I've been doing it ever since, and it's worked to great effect. So yes.
yeah, so make sure if you're watching this on Real Black TV and you've gotten this far, you're amazing. Because most people only watch the first 10 seconds of anything. But I mean, it shows that you're dedicated, you enjoyed the conversation. But if you're watching it on Real Black TV, please subscribe to Floyd so that he can be monetized and get the perks that come with all that. Increased viewership, and you're not going to miss out this great conversation. Thank you, Floyd.
Thank
And
you.
I love you, so I
Love you back,
appreciate you.
brother. And my brother went to Central, and my wife graduated from Girls High. So
Okay.
all day long, all day long. Well,
Yeah, I have a
ladies and
love hate, but right now I like it was a good experience.
okay, okay, okay. Well, it shaped you and made you partly who you are right now, the good and the bad. As Ed Milet says, things happen to you or happen. What is it? Things that don't happen to you, they happen for you. So even the bad experiences happen for you because they
I
build
think
your
most
character.
people had crummy high school years, so I can't blame Central for that.
Yo, I loved my high school years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I would Dobbins Mustang all day long. So I loved my high school years. Dawn Staley, go Mustangs.
Okay.
I can't complain about it. But again, I'm gonna let you go, brother. But again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on a conversation with Floyd Marshall. And I was joined by the amazing Mike D. Make sure you subscribe to all his channels if you're not already, and if you can, send some Cash App money to the restoration of RiverBend, because it is definitely something that we as Black people need to do, is to have our films restored so where they can be seen. And I'm going to end it like I always do. Love this like a hobby, but treat it like a business. And on that note, everyone, have an absolutely phenomenal night. Peace.